Hey, good afternoon and welcome DVD Markets family, guys. It's a Monday, it's beautiful, it is crazy cold, but it is so good to be with every single one of you. Guys, I love how every time there's a change of season, we wander back to, was it cold this cold last winter? Was it this warm this summer? Every time a new winter hits, I'm like, is it going to get any colder? And it definitely does. So as a result, I've got a bit of a flu thing happening here. So if I sound a bit groggy, just because a little touch of flu, otherwise not too bad. Guys, how are you doing and where is everybody joining us from? Let me know where in the world you're joining from city, country, whatever the case may be. Love to hear from every single one of you. Just a quick shout out, I can see a couple people in the house. I see Fabian Fruard, Rishmi, Troy, Alvin, I can see Toby, I can see Zarina, I can see Nelson's in the house, Warren, Smart Choices, let's see who else is here with us, as well as to Melo. Beautiful stuff, guys. Must be cold in Joburg. It is cold in Cape Town. And yeah, I just keep hoping this is the coldest it's going to get. Everyone says it's going to get a whole lot more colder. So guys, thank you for joining this afternoon. We're going to dive into some market data, dive into what's happening in the world of finance. And we're going to be speaking about the announcement of the new services we're going to be offering. And I'm sure it's going to blow you guys all away. It's something we've been asked for the longest of times. And it's finally time to combine all these things to give you guys an unparalleled experience and service within the market. So without further ado, let's jump in, let's get into the markets, and let's just quickly do a touch on what we saw NFP Friday, right? So a couple of you guys that traded with us live, we had some pending orders set up higher north, even though once we got the data, I was fairly unsure about where markets were going to go, just because the data was so inconsistent. I sent you an article earlier this morning that I really wanted you guys to read, which basically, makes me wonder, where did they get this 300,000 plus jobs? But unemployment ticked higher. We saw certain metrics that were bad for the dollar, they ticked higher, but there's just this massive job growth. Where's this job growth coming from? And so I sent a link there. You guys can go ahead and have a look at that. But essentially, just to break it down, we're just going to look at the markets really quickly and just look at the news before we get into the charts, right? And there's a bunch of mixed news here. We're going to speak about this in a second. But I quickly just want to really first touch on, what we ended up seeing from the data side of things. And if we go and have a look here, in terms of what's busy happening in the world right now, we got a bit of a mixed bag for a couple reasons, right? So you can go through the data, you can look at it sort of page by page, but this is essentially what it meant, right? Is that we saw this growth in opening of jobs, or people that are basically becoming employed. But we saw this tick up in unemployment. We saw average hourly earnings tick down. We saw certain metrics that showed us that the Federal Reserve's job of increasing interest rates is starting to pay off, but then we see this massive uptick in numbers. Now, this is where the skeptic in me starts to kick in and go, how are they showing those numbers and how are they translating? If that is the baseline reading, right, of what's going on, how is that translating, right? And how is that all working together? So essentially what we saw on Friday was basically a mixed bag of numbers. Now, we generally see where one is higher, the other is lower. But in this case, they're basically a set of numbers that basically say two opposite things. And this is why we saw on Friday, the markets immediately reacted like, oh wait, this is bad for the dollar based on what we saw. But then markets started to we saw divergence in the markets. Now, what this means is that markets took that information, they meant different things to different markets. Now, traditionally, what we see is that if we have economic data on a currency, euro, ZAR, pound, except the ZAR, guys, the ZAR is like that old guy smoking a crack pipe outside the 7-Eleven. ZAR doesn't know what it's doing, right? So exclude ZAR. It's euro, pound, yen, dollar. When we see this data, it's very easy to see what the markets have concluded. Because remember, it doesn't matter what we think as individual traders. We got to have an idea of what's happening, but essentially it's what the market as a whole thinks. And that's why we use price action. So that when price action breaks certain, let's say, order blocks, liquidity blocks, that is where we collectively have said, okay, we want to trade with the market. The markets have decided. Now, in most of these cases, when it comes down to a currency, right, which underpegs certain assets, commodities, in this case, certain markets took the data we saw on NFP for different reasons. If we look at traditionally across all other markets, we look at euro, dollar, we look at USD ZAR, as well as gold as a commodity, most of those markets took it as strength for the dollar. Now, if we go and have a look at US 30 as well as US 100, they took it as weakness to the dollar for the reason being that they wanted to see unemployment tick higher because that's what the Fed is looking for. So NFP Friday meant different things to different markets, and we didn't see that correlation across the board. And that is why I believe that markets were quite confused about the numbers. And I think it's going to make for an interesting trading day as well as trading week as we open up the data and we get into it. So I see some opportunities in US30, certainly some opportunities in gold, and we're going to dive through that. But I just want to clarify why it was a little bit of a mixed bag. And you guys can go have a look at that article and we will break through that. Another item I want to talk about is something, I think it was Fabian, that Fabian put it in the discussion group. So you guys will see in the Telegram group, we've posted a new link to a new group. That is where we can discuss things. You guys can post charts, ask for information. And I sent through a link about, essentially the correlation between gold as well as Brent crude or oil. Because traditionally, if you guys were trading pre-2020, there was always a correlation between commodities. And remember, oil and Brent is a commodity, just like gold, silver, wheat, coffee, etc. There used to always be that correlation that one ticked up, they ticked up together. But rather than, the one influencing the other value to the top side, it was more in the case that when Brent or crude ticks up, the dollar loses value just because that commodity is power. And the dollar losing value meant the correlation between gold, silver, coffee, etc. Those ended up ticking higher too. So it's not that Brent is somehow inextricably linked to gold, let's say, but it is and does have a direct correlation on the power of the dollar. Right, so I've sent through an article. However, I am sending through an article right now. It is going to be popping into the Telegram group as we speak. The beautiful Miss Marsha Bart's going to drop the link, and there the link is right now in the group. And that's going to be a very interesting read because that speaks about what that whole Saudi Arabia deal is all about. Right, now we saw in the past, Saudi Arabia has done this in the past, and they mentioned very specifically that they're cutting production to increase the price of oil. Right. When you have a monopoly on the supply chain, it's very easy to say, okay, we're not going to be pumping as much. So we must keep a little bit of a focus. We are going to have a bit more of a focus on Brent, on some of these other items. However, I did take the time just to ensure, I haven't looked at this correlation in quite a bit of time, just to ensure, the gold and Brent prices. If we look at pre-2020 at the moment, I don't have the data on TradingView, but pre-2020, we had that correlation. You can kind of see it over here. And I believe this is mostly pandemic type things that have broken this correlation. But we used to have a correlation between the two. I'd say effectively January 2021, there was a correlation. We lost that correlation as we moved over further into time, right? So I did go into the data and just see, do we have that correlation? And it seems we don't across the board. So thank you for that question, for jumping and let us know. I can see Steven's in the house. Stefan, welcome, my brother. Let's jump in. Okay, so I did send through this article. You guys can go through and read it out and just have a look. S&P 500 heat maps, obviously reading out gray, but as you guys can know and or assume, it was pretty much lit up green due to Friday's NFP, and the Wall Street essentially taking that as a positive sign on the weakening of the dollar, positive sign taking advantage of the markets. However, before we get into indices, I just want to talk about the trade that I sent through, or its potential trade that I sent through this morning, or at least the screenshot. So in the general group, all I sent is this market moving here and this over here. In the Premium Plus group, I mentioned if this channel holds true and if we break certain levels, that's where I'll be looking for buys. Now, because we're doing this obviously in a live environment, I can speak about it. But ultimately, that zone for where we're looking at those buys is currently sitting at the 1946 level, so $1,946 to an ounce of gold. Disclaimer, I do already have a buy in place. Now I've got a buy on this triple bottom low here, right? Again, this is looking at gold 1 minute time frame. So I've squeezed in a buy on this triple bottom low, and I've got a stop loss and profit. Now here is part of the announcement and part of the big thing that I want to obviously speak about. So you guys know my passion is sitting about education, empowering traders to trade, and allowing people to learn the skills that can do it for themselves. You guys know that's my heart. That's what DVDM Markets is built around. But there's a huge requirement for people. There's a big request, and I've had this request for longest of times. People saying, hey, is it possible for you to just send, when you take something, that we can have access to know, all right, Dane is buying this, and these are the reasons, etc. Right? And I've been pushing back on that for quite a while because, again, I don't want to make people dependent on the services that we provide. However, I have come to the realization, I acknowledged that being as it may be from an educational perspective, we inadvertently do have people who are dependent on what it is that we provide, what we speak about, what we do, and what we trade. So that is why we are going to be launching this week the DVDM Markets Signal service. And this means that every time I place a trade, right? So as an example, this trade was placed. As and when a trade is placed in the DVDM Markets Premium Plus, you'll receive the exact entry point that I take a trade, my stop loss levels, TP1, 2, and 3, and the reason behind the trade, as well as a bit of a setup and in terms of screenshots, right? Now, you can see at the moment, gold is currently attempting to push the resistance here. Behind me, you can see it just over there. So if you guys have that trade, if you set it up through a pending order, then you're good to go. However, if you want to get earlier entries prior to being live, or you want to get trades throughout the day, this is where I will be sending through these positions for you to be able to take advantage of. Now, very, very simple process. For the next little bit, it will still remain free, meaning all you need is HFM or Trade255 live account that's funded, and I'll put you into one of the Premium Plus groups. However, after this week, right, we are moving to a signal service, right? Meaning if you have HFM or Trade255 account, you'll get a massive discount up to 60% off of the monthly fee. And that will drop the monthly fee down to $399. So just under 400 Rand, or closer to $20, just because the South African Rand is doing so bad right now. So after this week, or whenever that expires, right, you will then have that discounted opportunity. But when in the next few days, if you jump in, you get the whole month of June for free. So if you're in the Premium Plus group, or you're in one of the Premium Plus groups, you're currently covered and you have the services for free for the month of June. Thereafter, guys, $20 is not all too much, right? I'll give you an example why we've decided to do this, right? And I had this discussion, I think it was with Fabian. I had this discussion with somebody else that ended up, I think we spoke to a little bit earlier. And my goal is saying, how do I essentially create a service that someone can pay for in their first day of trading? This is the question, right? So let me show you an example here behind me, right? So let's take gold as an example, right? Even if you entered a tiny position, right? 0.1, even on $100, you're good to go. Even a tiny position, right? For this small trade over 2-3 hours would have generated $60. So you've paid for your signal service for 3 months, basically off one position. And that was the goal, is how do we make people self-sufficient, but at the same time, give somebody a reason to take it seriously and make sure they are sorted out. Okay, Vianney's saying, how do I get into the Premium Plus group? So I have an HFM account that is funded and being utilized. Vianney, super simple. Just pop us an inbox with your HFM ID. If we migrate some of the DVDM Markets brand and banner, then you get in, and you get in for free. So drop us a link or drop us a message, Telegram down below. You can inbox us directly. Okay, let's talk about the markets really quickly, because it is time to look at the New York Stock Exchange. Now, I'm quite curious about where we're going to see markets go this afternoon. 2 reasons, right? This is currently looking at US 30 on a 15-minute time frame, and I'm just zooming in here, or I'm just having a little bit of a zoomed out version. I just want to show you what happened when we look at NFP on Friday, right? We initially saw markets pull down, right? But then we saw markets push back up. Markets basically waited on Friday until the New York Stock Exchange, and then markets took off, right? Where we are today, markets have pretty much been in a sideways consolidation, right? All the way up to this moment. We broke out of the sideways move a few minutes ago. So here's the big thing, right? If New York Stock Exchange opens up in the next minutes or so, and we see that push to the top side in the structure, I will be buying into the New York Stock Exchange, because essentially markets are going to reveal that's where they want to go. However, inversely, right? Should we not see markets make it into the structure, I will be shorting the New York Stock Exchange if we fail to make it in the structure, right? Again, there's just a 15 minutes because a closer time frame, just because this big market push here doesn't allow us to see the full value or the full picture, right? Quickly having a look really quickly at US 100 on a 1 minute time frame. US 100 may also give us a secondary confirmation. US 100, also known as tech. We might also utilize this as a potential zone for pullback and for potential break towards the downside. However, a topside move here literally just means, specifically looking even at US 100, is basically breaking where we are in this current moments in time, right? So there, US 100 looks like she wants to push for a top side move. US 30 is slightly sideways. Let's just double check quickly. There we go. Beautiful. Thank you. So Miss Marsha Bartz is just doing the quick summary of what I've just said there really quickly. So you guys can obviously just take notes for the month of June. Premium Plus is free provided you've got that live account sorted out. Okay, I've just got to double check why my system does take so much time just to load. So we always just wait for that first candle just to blow out and just make sure. So as you guys remember, we will be relaunching the New York Stock Exchange strategy in the course of this week, right? Meaning New York Stock Exchange open. You guys remember we devised a strategy to essentially wait for the volatility to end, and then we look for that turning point, which is what we're obviously going to be looking at. So just keep in mind that as well. So what we're going to do here is we're going to be looking at popping out potentially a sell. Should we make some new lows here, I will be aiming for that sell. NASDAQ is pushing to the top side, so I don't like when we don't have that correlation. When we're sitting with a little bit of a broken correlation. Just quickly giving a quick look as to where German 30 is currently sitting on a 1 minute time frame. German 30 looking for that downside break, which is great, supports my US 30 sell, but I do want to see US 100 just ease off of that major high. US 100 is not, and that's going to make me a little bit more hesitant to enter into a short here, just from that reason, right? We do like to see all of them playing ball together, and US 100 is not. US 100 is not playing games. Tech is definitely heading towards that top side. So we aren't breaking our entry points, right? Remember, the entry point for us on gold is currently sitting at 94660 from a pending order perspective. We're not getting over that level, so we're just going to have a look what markets finally decide on if dollar is going to be weaker or if dollar is going to be stronger, right? So guys, you'll remember Lucky's asking, why is the spread so big? So you remember, New York Stock Exchange open, spread will always open up, right? That's an opening of a market, the most volatility that you'll see. Yeah, NAS definitely looks like it wants to go to Friday's high. Might even want to get over that, right? So Friday's high is sitting just over here, just in terms of Alverna's comment there. But US 100 looks like she wants to sink, guys. So, you know, I don't like chasing, you know, these shorter lows, but US 100 basically has completed this, you know, consolidation sideways, essentially broken down, done that little bit of a retest. So we are going to look at this. Now, we are going to revise our New York Stock Exchange open trading strategy, and we will develop it further. As you guys know, we essentially developed some of a strategy in the last couple of months to look at avoiding the volatility, but then looking at where markets ultimately end up pushing to. Now, what we don't have to worry about this afternoon for this session is two things, right? First thing being, we don't have to be in a position right now, specifically on NASDAQ as well as US 30, for the reason being that we do have some fundamental data, and I've left this out because we do have some ISM data that is going to be coming out for the dollar. That's going to be at 4 o'clock. So at 4 o'clock, we are going to be pulling the trigger on looking at that, and that should give us some dollar bias confirmation if we don't already have one. So if we don't have dollar bias confirmation, we will have one a little bit later. We've got a tiny position in here with a tiny stop loss. I'm not going to be having a big area over here to the downside. However, I do want to just monitor that we don't break these highs on gold, because if we do break these highs on gold, we know where gold very well may end up going, because then we've broken multiple price action structures, right? I did send through a screenshot of this setup. I haven't changed all too much, but you can see we're pretty much re-honoring that market level there beautifully. As it was sent in the group, I haven't edited it whatsoever from this morning. We didn't have all this other market data, but essentially it's going towards the top side. So Alvin is saying NAS was delayed other times as well. They have already. So the coin flip, it will be green for the dollar. Yeah, it's I don't know 100% if it's gonna be green for the dollar. If it's green for the dollar, it means we should see some essentially green for the dollar would mean a fall on commodities as well as indices, right? And we're not, for those of you who have the key eye among you, you would also notice we're not trading correlation on indices and commodities, right? So I'm not looking for shorts on indices and shorts on commodities. The item that I mostly want to pay attention to, Kulani is saying, following from Swaziland, what's happening, Kulani? The item I want to pay attention to, okay, so I've had this a few times from our previous shows, people asking, what is VWAP, right? Because we're going to be using it quite a bit in determining where markets go back to and ultimately how we deal with stop losses, etc., right? And essentially what we're going to be doing this afternoon, if we go through north of VWAP, right? VWAP on US30 is currently sitting at 338.39. That's where we're going to start to get extremely long on US30. But if we fail that level, we're going to go down. So what is VWAP, right? And how do people use it? Why is it used? And why is it a stable measurement tool for markets across the board, right? So I can't remember the actual individual letters, but it's VWAP is volume weighted average something, right? Essentially what it does is every single day VWAP resets, and what it's looking at is it's looking at cumulative volume of the markets. It's looking at open and close rates, but it's looking at the volume and how many positions are going into a market and how far markets are deviating from VWAP. So how do we utilize this as traders, right? There's two things. Volume weighted average price. There we go. P is for price, right? So essentially how this works is that in most cases, price will go away from VWAP, or it'll form like a moving average, just the same way we utilize smooth and moving averages, exponential moving averages, exactly the same way. However, the difference with VWAP is that a large amount of hedge funds on Wall Street monitors VWAP, right? Now, the reason this is important is that they're not looking at VWAP for the reason of taking advantage of a market in terms of buying and selling. What most Wall Street or funds are looking at doing is they utilize VWAP to offload their stocks, their positions in the market, because again, if they offload too many positions in the market, they can cause a directional change in one way or another. So what they're simply looking at doing is that, let's say in this particular case here, right, US30 is under VWAP, right? What they will end up doing is they will, under VWAP, is they'll start accumulating positions, right? So they don't accumulate all too much. And what ends up happening is as they accumulate positions, price will go back to VWAP, right? If price goes through VWAP, they'll start to sell some positions. So they utilize that in order not to actually move price in the opposite direction, but rather to be able to take and place orders, or at least offload orders into a market. Now, why that's important for us as traders is that essentially VWAP is essentially a level that traders trade to. Listen to what I'm saying, right? So in most cases, fundamentally, a person will be taught out there, you know, if you break a moving average, it's time to buy. In the eyes of Wall Street, this is much different, right? They're trading to VWAP and not away from VWAP, right? However, if price goes through VWAP, this is essentially a confirmation of a market turning. So what you'll notice if you apply a VWAP indicator is that you're going to end up seeing this massive reset every day, right? Almost a diagonal line, pretty much sheer diagonal back to where current price is, and it will start tracking today's values, right? And I think that's also an important thing to essentially, although it is saying P for profits, that's essentially other thing also to understand is it's not taking past data into consideration. It's taking only the day's data into consideration. So that means it's a really great tool for scalping. There's a ton of strategies out there on how to utilize VWAP, and it's up to you to decide if you want to use it. However, what I use it for the most is looking at where to utilize stop losses. So example, if I'm selling off of VWAP, or meaning I'm selling and markets are below VWAP, I will utilize that as a potential area to set stop losses so that when price goes back to that level, I don't end up, you know, getting knocked out. And you'll see, as with the past, if you have a look at VWAP over here, obviously market momentum, you know, there's only one time it went through, and that was potentially a potential attempt on breakout, right? So as long as there's price action involved, right, that could have been an attempted breakout, failed, price moved down to the downside. The other thing that I just want to share in terms of why I also potentially believe this afternoon we could see some thinning out of this US 30 market to the top side is if we have a look on a 15-minute time frame, right? The US 30, otherwise Dow Jones, in the London or the European session basically thinned out right over there, right? Zero momentum right there. Nothing was happening. And so we started to move outside of market structure, right? This movement outside of market structure for me basically shows this weakness, that there's been a monster rally and we need some sort of retracement, right? We need some sort of pullback into, normality, right? So again, for this afternoon session, if we see, right, and you guys, for those of you who remember the strategy in terms of how we did it back then, if we see US 30 not remain back in the structure or above the structure by, I think it's 4 o'clock, we're then going to start to look for opportunities towards the downside or more serious opportunities. If that is paired with the ISM data being negative on the dollar, or sorry, positive on the dollar, which it very well could be, then obviously you guys know the drill from there. Okay. Yeah. Definitely looking weak here. It's just updating. We're probably closer to somewhere down here to the downside. Oh, someone was asking about can't find US 100. Obed, Fabian is 100% right. Depending how you search for it, if you are, depending who you are with, in terms of your brokerage, but essentially in most of the cases, US 100 is simply referred to as just US 100, right? So if you are using your MT4, you want to just right click, you just want to say show all, right? You want to make sure that is activated so that you can see all the instruments that are available to you. Okay, so for the session, right, again, we're getting basically due to Friday's sort of sideways NFP data, markets are still trying to make sure, and it's crazy that we see this, right? Because Friday after the New York Stock Exchange open seemed like a one-way run towards the top side. But what I can see looking at this market data here is markets are still unsure over where they want to be, right? Specifically US 30, right? NASDAQ may very well know where it wants to be. NASDAQ is actually not even concerned with where it wants to be. NASDAQ has already beaten Friday's high. So potentially the fault here is we should have potentially followed NASDAQ a little closer and maybe given that a bit more focus, because NASDAQ absolutely and certainly knows where it wants to be. In addition to that, I just want to go and double check Friday. I'm pretty positive Friday we had a very similar situation where NASDAQ was dead certain over where it wanted to be. Let's have a look here. So Friday NASDAQ kind of gave away where it wanted to be almost immediately. And then we saw a massive pullback. However, on the New York Stock Exchange, we did see, let's see here. No, apologies, NASDAQ didn't. If you guys remember, NASDAQ was pretty much sideways for the NFP data, right? The way the NFP data read, my initial response was it's bad for the dollar, just because the unemployment rates. But what was a major throw off was those much higher new employment readings, right? Which was basically what threw me off there quite a bit. So NASDAQ didn't lead, which it actually sometimes and most of the time does. This might be tech induced. My phone did it to avoid activation. It'll appear on my PC when I select new charts. Lucky, so that's a really good trick. Albeit a little bit dangerous. I really incentivize people that, when you want to find an order on your PC or you want to find an instrument, right, just control M if you're using MT4, MT5, and just go through the instrument lists, right? You'll in most of the cases find indices grouped together after your last currency pair, ZAR, JPY as an example, and you'll see everything here. You'll see pretty much all your other indices, UK 100, USA 100, all the other items. Okay, that's generally the way to go. On HFM, it's simply USA 100, right? If you still can't find it, okay, you can double click. Let's see if I can get out of the frame here. I just want to show you guys something. I'm pretty sure you guys know this already, but I'm just going to quickly hide myself so you can see here. So if you can't find it, right, double click here on the bottom and you can literally type in the bottom here US 100, right, and it'll open up US 100. So that's just a quick trick to get into the instrument if you know its shortcuts or you know what it's called. You should always be able to find your instruments on your PC. I know there might be some workarounds for that, but that's, you know, the general rule of what we need to end up doing. So what we're seeing now, okay, gold's starting to make its push here. This is great to see. So we're starting to see gold be definitive about where it wants to go. So gold is looking for that buy side. It's certainly at least testing that buy side opportunity, or at least the top limits of that market there, right? So at that point there, our pennings should have already basically moved into activation status. Again, this is the importance of getting in early, or at least having multiple positions in, layering up into an order, at least getting a little bit earlier into a market, right? So gold shows a little bit of extra activity towards the top side. If you guys had your pendings at 1946.60, you should be at that point already in about 16 pips of profit. So I wouldn't say move stop loss to entry because it's still a bit tight, but I'd say just wherever your stop loss was. I know Fabian inboxed me and asked me about a stop loss. If you've got a stop loss at 1944, which is kind of where I suggested, then maybe tighten that up to maybe 1946 flat, right? Or 1945.50, somewhere around about there. Gold showing us a little bit of momentum there, that it's seeing some of that weaker dollar. Still looking at US 30, a little bit of indecision, right? And this is great. We know what this is about. We've seen this in the past. We know what US 30 is thinking. And this is what it basically comes down to, right? US 30 is consolidating. Symmetrical triangle means it's not sure over the next move, right? So again, as you guys know, we're going to work into this apex here, and then we're going to receive a breakout or a direction. And we'll potentially trade that breakout or direction. US 100 is a runaway steam train, right? US 100 basically has done a 800 pip run, right? Really quickly. US 30 is still deciding. So US 30 looks like it wants to go, it wants to make a bullish breakout, right? We will have a bit of a risk by taking a trade before the 4 o'clock mark. Oh wait, apologies. I think we get some of the data at 3:45 and some of the data afterwards. So services PMI May is negative, right? Negative. Remember, it's anything above 50, right? Still shows positivity, but it's still less than they expected, right? Still less than they expected. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to pop in a US 30 long, and I'm simply just going to hold that long. I'm going to put my stop loss, very, very small stop loss, right, for US 30, purely for the reason being it isn't yet 4 o'clock and we haven't received the second set of data. So for me, I'm entering on a US 30 long at 33.808, and my stop loss can be 33.781. And that accounts for around about 2,000 points, right? 200 pips, somewhere around about there. And just having a look at that data. So services PMI, we're going to have two sets of data this afternoon. We've got services PMI that just popped out now for 54.9. Now, how it works with these PMI data releases, anything above 50 demonstrates positivity, right? Now, these PMI audits, these PMI sort of how do I say, it's an audit, it's a survey of all these views and feels. It basically considers about 90% of the US economy's decision makers, right, are sitting in that PMI survey. So anytime under 50, there's some deep trouble, right? Anything above 50 signals some positivity. So yes, it's above 50, but it's maybe not as positive as economists were expecting, but it's still semi-positive, right? If you jump into services PMI and just go have a look at the history there, you'll see it's very rarely ever been under 50, right? So looking for a sub 50 mark, I think that is, you know, immediate post-pandemic type levels. So have a look at post-pandemic, we're sitting in the 40s, leading up to the 50s. So that was obviously quite bad. Where we are now, above 50 is kind of the expectation. The big item on the agenda for this afternoon, and we're going to take a little break before we get this data release. The big item on the agenda for this afternoon is going to be the ISM non-manufacturing PMI, right? That forms quite a big chunk of the US economy, and that's going to be a little bit more sensitive because we're floating and teetering on that 51.8, right? Again, not too long ago, we received a sub 50 number, but again, in a sub 50 number, as we saw in sort of beginning of this year, end of last year, these were numbers that were building up from a much lower number. So even though it was sub 50, it's still a tick up from economists, and we've seen that quite substantially, specifically looking at, and we just look at, let's have a look here, December, January, February, March, we've been ticking up. However, if you look at where we are now, we're starting to teeter and or tick down, right? So this is going to be pretty important. Let's just see here. So that's going to be pretty important where we are today, because we could receive a sub 50 number, bad for the dollar, very bad for the dollar, and could potentially see us heading skyward on USD, right? So USD has reached that apex point now. We're not receiving any momentum here. If I just adjust ever so slightly, even if we compensate for maybe not enough data there, we're not seeing any sort of breakout yet on that number. US 100 is pretty much making a full retracement right towards the downside. So if you were long on US 100 or you caught that breakout, you may want to consider wrapping up some of your profits, because this could be a fairly big pullback in the sense that we could make a 61.8, 78.6 or 88.2 pullback. It's obviously quite a big one, right? And then I would just basically say, prior to this data, just wrap up and look and make sure that you are at least risk managed on the gold side. So if you're on a gold trade, you want to just make sure you've got your risk covered. We are technically outside of the zone, right? And if we have a look at the definition for a change in market, right, we can see gold has been, bearish, right? After NFP data, gold's been bearish, dollar's basically been dominating markets, but we've made that triple bottom. We've made an attempt. Now remember, these little attempts here, and I get this question quite a lot, is these attempts above and below, these are just liquidity grabs, right? These are just, bear traps and bull traps. Now, the reason why I don't take a breakout, right? I don't take a small poking above a market structure, even though it's great for scalping, is that those little temporary pushes out of zone are generally little traps, right? Sent to, break some sort of structure, break some sort of indicator, and people end up getting all these buy or sell signals. So that's why we generally look at, specifically even this morning when I sent out that opportunity, I was looking at markets were already there and it wasn't yet official buy, for the reason being we still needed to go past resistance 1, right? Resistance 2, which was VWAP, resistance 3 being that previous market structure at the 1946 mark. So the fact that we're above there on the session and the dollar's open for trade and we haven't yet fallen gives me hope that this still has some potential to get to the top side. However, the only issue on gold is that we do have this diagonal to get through, that is this market structure, right? We will have some demand supply sitting in this area that we need to make sure that gold's able to press through, and then that could pretty much be in for a fairly good trade. So we're going to quickly do a 3 minutes, not even 2 minute intermission. We're going to quickly do a camera and battery change, and then we'll be right back as we open up and have a look and read into that ISM data for this afternoon. ISM data should be the final part of the puzzle, provided the fundamentals aren't broken. So I'd like to know from you guys, are we going to see some broken fundamentals, or will these things actually tie up, right? Regardless of that, even if we see fundamentals are slightly dodgy, we're going to rely on price action and make sure we bring it back home. So quick break, 2 minutes, quick intermission, and I'll see you guys in a second, and we will carry on jumping into these markets. So let's see if we can just pull off an afternoon with some good profit. That would be the way to go. So I'll see you guys in a bit. Help if I get the camera back on. There we go. Okay, back into it. All right, guys, let's jump in. Let's just have a look what's happening. Okay, so just give me a quick touch on gold. We've gone to our level. We've slightly tapered off, but that's fine. We've got enough momentum towards the top side. Let's see what 4 o'clock brings us. That data is going to be key to looking at the strength of the dollar. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, all we're waiting for now is that ISM non-manufacturing PMI data. That's going to be coming out in the next little bit. However, again, regardless of whether we get sideways data or not, we are going to be paying attention to the pure price action side of things. So it seems like we've reached the apex. US30 is still determined to be slightly lower than price currently is at. However, because we've got this big data coming through, high impact news in the next 4 minutes, well, specifically 3 minutes and 10 seconds, we're not going to be trading price action on this one in terms of a breakout, right? My red flag news at 4 o'clock is load shedding. That's something we've got to be aware of in SA as well, is load shedding, guys. Rika's saying that's her high impact news. Okay. So guys, I would have loved to just taken the breakout towards the downside, but in this particular case, due to the fact that we are literally getting news in the next little bit that could swing this, I would love to be holding a short right now. Again, original price action of this pullback, retouch potential short is ideally where I'd want to be. I'd love to be just chasing it, but it is what it is, right? The reason I'm not doing that is for the reason that we do have a gold trade obviously in play, right? So at least I'm in profit on one of those directions or trajectories. What I would potentially do now, just prior to this news coming out, again, if you are on that gold long, just maybe tighten up your stop loss again, 1945.23, or even to entry. Let's go to entry and you can basically get yourself just covered there, right? If you got a 1946 even entry, you should be running 20 plus pips in profit. Just close a portion of that position or move some stop loss. Take some profit on that one, guys. Do yourself a favor, be kind to yourself, take some profit on that one. US 100 is kind of settling down now, right? So that's fine. No issues there. However, let's just have a look at what's going to happen here. So we've had a pullback to 78.6. US 100 generally likes a pullback deeper to 88.2. 88.2 would also be closer to the market structure that we have here, right? So if we have a look at that, I would not be surprised afternoon if we see a little spike to 88.2 and then a continuation. So I'm just going to be keeping my eyes on US 100 as well. But let's just quickly have a look. Right, gold, nice little push there, nice little push up into that 1948.92 zone. And again, we're starting to clear out some of these resistance levels, so that's proving to be slightly positive there. Let's just make sure what data we get in here for this ISM non-manufacturing PMI. So we still have about 50 seconds until that data release comes through, and we'll double check it. Another thing I just want to point out, for those of you who are oil traders, right, I did have a look, and somebody else can confirm for me if I'm not seeing this. Kerwin is saying if they're in US30 sell, if you're in profit, just go ahead and just secure that position, right? So if you're in that sell, that breakout, just go ahead and just move your stop loss, cover yourself at the point of breakouts, right? Just a note here, if anybody does and is on HFM, right, just let me know if you guys see Brent crude, right? The only thing I have is US oil, right? Which is essentially, I think the short term is US oil that they have, right? Yeah, so if anybody else has Brent crude, anything else, please let me know. Gold, massive spike there to the top side. If you're in your gold trade, you should be celebrating there. That should have been a weaker dollar. There we go, weaker dollar, massively weaker dollar. Let's give it US30 a look here. This should be a US30 bull run, right? And look what US30 is doing, not doing anything. But if you're in your gold trade right there, you should be smiling. Go ahead and tighten up that, move your profit in, stop loss into profits. Let's move that, let's move that. I'm going to move both of my trades there. There we go. That's pretty much tripling a fairly small account there. So if you're in your gold trade for a buy, do yourself a favor, send me a screenshot. Let me know if you're in profit there. My link is down below in the Telegram group. So if you're in that gold buy position, you should be absolutely smiling. USDT is not doing anything, right? So if you're on a USDT sell, I would probably say close up some of those profits. But USDT is not doing anything that it should be, right? We should be seeing USDT absolutely thumping it to the top side. And that's where it should be going, right? So I'm doing a USDT buy because that's where the data says it should go. And I'm just going to hold that buy, right? So there we go. If you're in a USDT buy, you should be in a good amount of profit already. It's about 300 pips of profit. What I would do now on USDT is move your stop loss to entry. And all I'm doing on USDT is I'm adjusting. Let's utilize a 3,000 points trailing stop. So right click 3,000 trailing points, and then your USDT should be smiling in profit right there. So there, USDT is doing its thing. Let's have a look here. Okay, so give yourself a little bit of breathing room, right? So set yourself a stop loss there, but USDT should make a decent push there. US 100's already made the move. USDT didn't make the initial move that it had, but it should be making the secondary move, right? So just keep that in mind. Gold is absolutely thumping, guys. It's time for Trump. Let's bring Trump in to do his thing. Stomp on the screen there. Gold is absolutely smashing it to the top side. If you guys are on profit on gold, please do share that screenshot there, guys. We are over 100 pips plus in gold, right? For gold to be 100 pips, that is close to all the other instruments being at like 3,000-4,000 pips in profit, right? So that's a massive one. If you got in even earlier with me through the signal service, that was at 1940, right? That would be close to 200 pips of gold. So as an example, one day, one signal, one trade cents, right? Even at a tiny lot size at 0.10, that would be a $200 trade, right? $200 trade. Gold is still thumping. You can start to adjust your stop losses quite a lot deeper into profit. I would potentially drag stop losses. We can't use VWAP right now because we're already in profit, but I would drag stop losses potentially into the 1952 mark. And you should be chasing a monster bull rally on the gold price right there. So potentially close up some of those profits, take up one position. And again, let's just close that off really quickly. Let's just see who's all smashing some profits. Bobby Burner sending through those videos. I can see absolutely smashing it. Calvin is doing the most right there. Calvin, I hope those are in dollars. Calvin, are those dollars? Can you confirm for me? I hope those are in dollars. So Calvin doing the most right there and smashing it towards that top side. Let's have a look here. Vuyani. Let's see what he's up to. Beautiful stuff. Someone sent through a message saying, Marcel saying why they can't trade US 100, US 30, German 30, etc. on the HFM $50 bonus account for everybody who qualified for that. It's limited to and was limited to major instruments, major FX instruments, and gold, right? You can't trade NASDAQ, indices, anything else, just those items. That's what it was limited to. Beautiful stuff. Dollar just tanked below 104. Guess we'll see massive gains in indices. I would like to see it, but we're not seeing it right now, right? Have a look at this. US 30 is a little bit confused there, not making the moves we want to see. NASDAQ respecting some of that market structure, some of those highs, but not necessarily. Gold seems to be the winner for today. So drag some more, take some more of those profits. This is for you to decide as a trader. Is this a trade you want to hold? Or is this a trade you're going to essentially let go of, right? In the sense that closing up your profits, wrapping up a good Monday, or is it something that you want to essentially hold for a period of time? So I want to just bring this to your attention really quickly, right? So if we jump in on a 15-minute on gold, let's just have a look here. Okay. The reason why this is a big trade, and I would want to try hold this over a period of time, right? If you zoom out on a 15-minute, have a look at this diagonal, right? Basically, we've been in a bear market structure since the 4th, right? The 4th of May, right? 4th of May, we made a little bit of a pull, a breakout, but as you guys know with breakouts, a breakout's not be all and end all. Breakout can have a pullback. We completed the pullback on gold. That completed basically the end of last week, the start of this week. The breakout, the retest has been completed, and now this potentially has the momentum or has the legs to start getting back into some serious territory, right? Going on into an hour time frame, you can see here, even though we're in the scallop formation, right? Gold is in the scallop to potentially break further down, right? We are in this new market structure. So it has the potential, has the legs to get back up into some previous market highs, right? To start to, really challenge off some of these ultimate highs. But again, the markets would need a little bit more crisis involved in order to do that, right? So, gold, not impossible for it to be in a new, to break some of these highs. However, we would need some serious financial instability around the dollar to essentially see something like that translate. So up to you whether you want to risk manage this thing all the way to the end point. And, again, it's just going to be determining where you take your profits. Now, again, with all lines, channels, areas in the market, right, we can expect price to respect previous levels, right? So I might utilize this channel as a potential zone. However, if you want to take this gold trade, hold it for as long as it's going to potentially, give you profit, you've got to look at the potential of a retracement, right? Meaning gold can safely pull back to 61.8, even as deep as 78.6, and still be considered bullish. I just want you to understand this, right? Gold can pull back to 78.6, 1943 mark, and still be considered only retracing and then have its next season to the top side. So again, that still would be lower than your entry. So I would say move stop loss to entry, take a portion of your trade, and be done with it. Okay. So we can wrap that up and bank that one up there. US30 not having it to the top side. US30 having weakness on dollar weakness, right? Absolute mess. I'm gonna sell on US30 doing the opposite of what I'm supposed to do. No, well, yeah, because the fundamentals are broken, right? Think about the data moves, right? A weak dollar, stock markets should love that. Debt ceiling resolved, market should love that. Everything points it towards this afternoon, the market should love that. And what is US30 doing? Not that, right? US 100 is doing perfectly fine. So honestly speaking, and I get to that point sometimes in trading as well, where all the data points towards one way of doing things. And I suppose this is a very interesting lesson and or topic we can definitely just speak about for a second, right? A lot of the times we follow all these structures, right? We look at some of the fundamental data, we put in the price action, we put in the time, we put in the work, we read, we do all these things. At the end of the day, what remains king? Price action, right? And what is price action? Price action is price breaking certain levels, areas, zones. Now, in a lot of the cases, we're supposed to have price action first and then layer in all the other things, right? Remember, that's what I teach, is that price action comes first, everything else comes secondary. A lot of the times, right, and especially that's how news, media, all these other things, that's how they trick us. They feed us all this data that may be wrong, may be manipulated. I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't, but I'm just saying you get access to all this information and it ends up affecting the decision one takes from a price action perspective, right? So sometimes an interesting lesson that we need to remind ourselves of is that at the end of the day, when things don't make sense, just follow price action, right? If we look at this break here, US30 has already overextended past support. So US30 is going to fall. I'm not going to potentially chase it because I'm not going to give back. I'm not going to give them my gold profit. But pure price action says US30 is going to fall irrespective of the fundamentals, regardless of what the dollar is doing, regardless of what data says. US30 is saying, I want to fall. So let it fall. You want to chase it, you guys are more than welcome. It's going to be a scalp trade at the end of the day. So it's completely up to you. US 100, respecting those levels above. USD ZAR, very, very interesting, right? I want to talk about USD ZAR just before we wrap up this afternoon. Now, just before I speak about USD ZAR, I'm going to get a lot of these questions, right? So for those of you already in the Premium Plus, as Marsha said, you qualify for the month of June, signals free, absolutely free. There on after, there's going to be a discounted type setup. That makes sure that you're serious, we're serious, and we're in this together. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we're going to, well, this is already launched, this is rolling out this week, right? In addition to that, we're launching a new dividend markets bot, right? Which is essentially an interface to chat with us. And that means if you want access to education, you got some questions, you got some queries, you have some issues with your accounts, whatever the case may be, or you want to pay for your services, whatever the case may be, it all happen through this bot. Please, however, be bearing in mind, this is a brand new thing, and we're not doing it the same way everybody else does it, because we have a few massive plans for the use of this technology, and it is going to be in beta form. So in your first engagement with it, with your first everything, just take it with a pinch of salt that something can go wrong. Please bear with us, and you guys can contact us, right? But this is launching this week. It may even be ready tonight, as an example, and it'll be launching out. And if you do still within this week get your live account funded and sorted, you can contact us. I'll give you a coupon code, a discount code, to get you into Premium Plus. If you're already in Premium Plus, you're obviously sorted, and you are 100%. So everybody in the next 2 days, right? Let's say 2 days, 48 hours, right? So from now until Wednesday, if you get your accounts funded, right, more than $100 with HFM 2 Trade 245, then essentially we will be putting you into the group for free. So you get the whole of June, all the shows, all the signals for free. Now remember, Dollars for Lunch is going to become a premium service, right? So meaning only Premium Plus clients we're going to be doing Dollars for Lunch for, and signals throughout the day. If you're just part of the old dividend markets or part of the groups, we will send through a trade or two a day to you for free, and you'll get pounds for breakfast for free. Meaning nothing changes. You get the education, you get the live broadcast, you get some of the content, some information about the markets, and maybe a trade or two. That still remains free, because that's still where my heart sits. However, for those who want and need more from us, we've developed this to give back even more from a business perspective. So I'm trusting you guys will enjoy it. I'm trusting you'll benefit from it, and it'll do something for your trading. Okay, thank you. Marsha's just summarized there. So we are going to be launching that in beta format. Something I just want to talk about on USD ZAR, right? So wrapping up last week, I explained USD ZAR has broken our structure. We could see that continue to retrace. However, I looked at this afternoon, where could we retrace to, right? USD ZAR for me, all right, on this 88.2, sitting at 19 Rand 23 cents to the dollar. This is a big one, right? So this is a big zone, right? If you look at what's happening in the South African Rand and just the drama that's happening with all this Russia stuff, right? Apparently we sold firearms to Russia. I don't know if this happened or didn't happen. I don't know if this is allegedly or it's proven. I don't know if anyone can fill me in on that. But apparently we supplied ammunition, firearms, whatever. Okay, cool, whatever. It is what it is. But apparently we're also hosting the Russian President Vladimir Putin, or we were supposed to have hosted him in is it August? I can't remember. You guys can let me know. We're supposed to be hosting him in August in Cape Town, right? Yeah, there's a whole bunch of drama there. Anyway, long story short, the South African Rand is risk adverse. Now, if we dive into the calendars, we look at tomorrow, right? You're going to see something very cool. And for those of you who've never traded the Rand before and you want to have a bit of fun, right? I'm saying a bit of fun. I know we're talking about real trading, real money, and nobody wants to lose money in this space. We have the gross domestic product for next week, Q1, right? And this is going to be kind of fun, because for those of you who don't know why it's called the rattlesnake, right? So the South African Rand is referred to by that's not even by us as South Africans, right? This is referred to by other people around the world as a rattlesnake for a couple reasons. First reason being, okay, that when the South African actually, right, that's quite fitting, right? It's pretty much doing what the dollar is doing, right? It's actually kind of strange. We've spoken about the dollar fundamentals being broken for a while, but hey, it's doing a very similar thing right here. The only difference being a bad dollar, gold goes to the sky. That's normal. We can make money, no issues, right? South African Rand, we have the gross domestic product coming out for tomorrow, right? Our GDP, right, year on year for Q1 is expected to be 2.2%, right? Annualized, quarter on quarter in terms of growth, we're expecting a negative number here. So I wouldn't be surprised if ZAR had good data and lost money or lost value, or bad data, whatever. So for this, just keep this in mind. That's coming out tomorrow morning, 11:30. So I will be sending out a signal for this based on what I see tomorrow on the price action. But what I'm telling you now, if you're not part of the Premium Plus group and you maybe want to follow this trade or whatever the case may be, or you just want to pay attention to it, right, and just see what I'm talking about in terms of ZAR being a rattlesnake, is I just want to show you that we are going to have some market structure and some price that comes into play here. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see a 1923 19 Rand 23, 19.24 Rand to the dollar bounce. But what I'll be looking for, if that bounce occurs and we get that negative Rand data, actually negative or positive, it actually doesn't matter. Whatever data we get, I'm not going to listen to because it's probably BS anyway. And it's probably made up figures. This is South Africa we're talking about. But ultimately, you know, then I would look for a buy on that 61.8 breakout top side, right? So again, I'm just showing you the structure. The reason being that you are aware that if we hit that 19.23, 19.24 to the dollar, our retracement is completed, and then we can continue to the north side movement. Kalani is saying, been holding a sell in USD ZAR. Kalani, you should be absolutely smiling. You may want to consider taking a portion of your profit in this zone, right? In case it was just a retracement. Yeah. Heinrich says, ZAR is the child that hides your keys. Fabian says, I always lose money trading ZAR. You know what? Me and ZAR have got like this love-hate relationship, right? There'll be seasons where ZAR will absolutely slap me around like it owes me, like I owe it money, right? But then there's seasons where we vibe, and the seasons where, you know, we on, you know, first name basis. You know, ZAR's like, hey Day, and I'm like, hey, what's up, ZAR? Are we good? And then other times we're not having it, right? Whatsoever. So it's a bit of a strange thing. Yeah, it's like an abusive relationship, right? ZAR is an abusive relationship. Like, you know, these people just keep going back. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe we've got Stockholm syndrome. I think it's the right term, right? We fall in love with our we've fallen in love with our abuser or captor. I don't know what the technical term is. Anyway, so there we go, guys. So if you got that gold trade, you should be smiling. If you're on a sell side, USD, right, no problem. But yeah, it's still from the point of breakout, a little bit sideways, definitely bearish. So definitely bearish, definitely would be worthwhile seeing how this continues to play out. But yeah, I'm not too keen on being involved here, right? This to me is a bit of a mess. There's too many things that don't line up for me to be kind of interested in this. We're seeing a very similar structure on NASDAQ actually, right? So even though we said NASDAQ is pretty certain about its directional future, right? On a, you know, just taking a zoomed out approach, we're seeing a very similar type thing here, right? NASDAQ is also in some sort of symmetrical consolidation here, where it's not really sure what it wants to do. So maybe, and again, we would in most cases utilize NASDAQ to confirm US30, but again, because of these two are so out of sync, primarily being today, it's not all to, we can't use it. That's what it comes down to. All right. But anyway, guys, good way to start the week, specifically on gold, especially if you caught that nice and early, especially you're able to bank some profits on that one. You should be smiling, you should be happy, and a great way to start the week. However, from tomorrow, you will receive pounds for breakfast. If you're part of the normal DVD markets group and you're part of the free group, you'll receive pounds for breakfast tomorrow morning in your inboxes nice and early. Dollars for lunch will be a premium plus edition show. If you are a free member, please don't worry. I will still send through 1 or 2 trades a day just to keep you happy, just to make sure you are making some sort of profit in the markets, even if you're not able to trade with us live. If you want to trade with us live, super simple. Just to summarize, you need a live HFM or Trade25 account with at least $100 in, send it to us, screenshot proof that we can see that it is real, and B, that you are allocated under the DVD markets affiliate link. That's the first thing, right? Those who get their accounts funded in the group the next 2 days will be there for free for the month of June. Thereafter, there's monthly fees that will apply, but we are going to keep it to around about $20, right? In the sense that I'm very confident that within the first trade or 2, you can have paid your monthly fee off for the entire month, and then you're in it to win it with us for the longer run, right? So if you want to get in there, get sorted. And yeah, the name of the bot is Marsha Bart. I wouldn't be able to afford that if Marsha would be a bot. We would all have to be trading 10 times the levels we're trading. So yeah. Okay, guys, listen. Thank you so much for your time. We will see you guys all in the morning, 9 a.m. Pounds for breakfast. I'll catch up everything you need to know in the markets, give you some price action, some setups, what I think is going to be happening. Other than that, in the morning, if you're part of Premium Plus, watch out for our signals. They're going to be fire. Going to be some crazy stuff. and we're only taking surefire trades. New York Stock Exchange is a little bit of a gamble, right? Because again, we have a ton of things coming into the markets. However, we're going to be trading morning, afternoon, evening. So watch out for those trades. We're going to be focusing primarily gold, primarily indices, as well as some of the currency pairs, right? We may be throwing into the equation oil coming over the next couple of days, specifically looking at what's busy happening and the OPEC domination there, but we will be changing it up. As always, we've opened up and renamed that one group. There's a lot of groups, guys. There's probably 30, 40 groups, but we've renamed the one group DVD Markets Discussion Group, right? This is where you can ask, keep it clean, keep it above board, obviously, as always. But this is where you can ask, you can send a trade setup and say, I need some help. What are we seeing here? Don't be afraid to send something there. You will always get help. Okay. Obviously, if it's at 10 at night, 1 a.m. in the morning, you might not get a response, but in most cases, someone from the team will respond to you. Other than that, guys, you know the deal. You know what it's all about. I'll see you guys in the morning, pounds for breakfast. Until then, have yourselves an amazing afternoon. If I see anything pop off this afternoon, I will send a signal. And yeah, Fabian, it is in the main group. Just double check there. I did say, hey, here's gold, let's discuss it. So just double check there. I can see a few people are joining as we speak, so it should be there. I'll ask the beautiful Mishmaster bot to just repost it in some of the groups for those of you who want to have that discussion. In addition to that, I know we're going to be having some help from Alvin and a few others to set up a Discord channel and community there, which I'm really excited for. That's going to be next level. So until we have that facility set up where everybody's got permissions and user accesses and different groups, we're good to go. But other than that, guys, you know the drill. As always, have yourselves an amazing afternoon. Until I see you all a little bit later, goodbye.